Nooga Radio, digital FM 95.3 HD4 and 92.7 FM knows your opinion is important. So call 800-8949. Agree or disagree. Call 423-800-8949. 800-8949. Nooga Radio, 92.7 FM and 95.3 HD4. News Talk Nooga Radio.
You're listening to Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com, 92.7 FM. Clutch with Keon Rose. That's the show. I'm Keon Rose. Closing out the day with some sports talk, right? And we're going to get into Cam Newton on Monday Night Football last night because Cam Newton had a big night. The NFC South is interesting. It's interesting. The Falcons, 5-4, still in the hunt. But Cam Newton, the Panthers, making that very difficult. The Saints making that very difficult. The Buccaneers are still garbage. Don't know how that's possible. I actually thought that was going to be one of the better teams in this division. I was very incorrect about that one. Right? It's weird that I would believe that, too, because I don't even buy that high in the Jameis stock. But I thought Jameis was doing all right, and I thought he was on a good path to being a better quarterback. Plus, they gave him all those weapons. I think they still have the best receiving core in the NFL. It's just being squandered mercilessly. So we'll talk about Cam Newton's big night last night. Does that mean that Cam is back? Turn of Superman. But first, let me talk about Tennessee and coaching, because we talked about Dan Mullen and John Gruden. I think John Gruden's out. I don't think he's coming to the Vols. I know that this is bad news for some people who felt like he was their best bet at turning this thing around, but his job is too comfortable. And college football has too many rules and is too stressful to imagine that a person would leave all that. Right? He gets paid a ton at ESPN to just sit down and talk about football. Why would you ever leave that? Right? Like, think about it rationally if you were him. Maybe it's a dream outside of the people for whom it is a dream that they would get to coach the Vols. If you were making millions of dollars to talk about football and watch football, would you leave that job for like a real job, for an actual job? Because I would not. I think Dan Mullen has good reasons to want to go to Tennessee, but I think his spot at Mississippi State's very comfortable as well. I think a lot of the reasons why you wouldn't go coach Tennessee is not that Tennessee's not a good job. It's like the job you currently have is very comfortable. Mississippi State can't do better than Dan Mullen. They can't. Not in this batch of coaches. I don't think they can do better than him. So Dan Mullen could just stay right where he is, knowing that pretty much as long as he doesn't misbehave, as long as he doesn't act a fool, he's not getting fired. He wins enough to justify his existence there, and they're good, usually. Dan Mullen could leave, and unless Tennessee throws an enormous amount of money at him to get him to come, I think he stays right in Mississippi State. Brady Hoke, that's the other name that comes up, right? Brady Hoke, the interim head coach. And Brady Hoke obviously would want to coach Tennessee. Brady Hoke, I think, would love to be a head coach again. We're talking about this. Brady Hoke, look, he's got a couple of games left on this schedule. Got to beat Vandy. I think he's got to win out, I think, to have a true opportunity to be a head coach. But there's another thing that Brady Hoke has to do. Brady Hoke has to keep this together. Right? He absolutely has to keep this together. And what do I mean by that? I mean the recruits, man. He cannot let that fall apart. He's got to keep the recruiting class together because we've already seen a few players transfer out or openly consider moving on to other schools. And Look, University of Tennessee and University of Georgia are not that far apart. Tough challenge for the Vols coming up this Saturday, play LSU. Tennessee beats LSU. First off, that doesn't speak well of Ed Orgeron, who's already this season lost to Troy. But secondly, you beat LSU, and you're Brady Hoke. You've put a very large feather in your cap. Very good reason for them to keep you around. You beat LSU. You obviously need to beat Vandy. And you keep this recruiting class together. And I think Brady Hoke's probably Tennessee's next coach. If he doesn't do two of those three things, it's not working out for him. Another name that's come up, and Sam Jordan mentioned this earlier, Bobby Petrino. Now, you get Bobby Petrino, you get a couple of things. You get a guy who can coach an offense. You get a guy that can develop quarterbacks and find good quarterbacks, right? I mean, you can see what's going on with Lamar Jackson at Louisville. And I don't care what anybody says. This year's Lamar Jackson is better than last year's Heisman Trophy winning Lamar Jackson. He's improved as a quarterback. You get a good coach if you get Bobby Petrino. You also get a knucklehead. Now, I am anti-knucklehead. I don't think that anybody is pro-knucklehead, but most people can be fine with knuckleheads at some points on their team. I am anti-knucklehead. And the reason why I'm anti-knucklehead is I'm a Washington sports fan, and I have seen it again and again and again. You put knuckleheads on your team, even if you have good players, you ruin your team. I don't need to go into all the examples because there's years of bitterness there. There's years of bitterness going all the way back to how about former Tennessee Volunteer Albert Hainsworth. Remember when the Redskins paid him $100 million to do nothing? Remember when they paid him $100 million and then he fell down on the field while Michael Vick was running actual circles around him on the field and he didn't get up and even try to chase him? Remember that? Because I remember that. Right? And then there was the whole thing with Chris Webber and all that stuff. Like, I've seen knuckleheadedness ruin sports teams. So I'm anti-knucklehead. Any position, any part of your team, eliminate them from your organization. But some people can live with them, right? For instance, the Golden State Warriors have JaVale McGee and Nick Young. Both of these people are knuckleheads, but they're a successful team because the people at the top of the team are not knuckleheads, which brings me back to Tennessee and Bobby Petrino, because Bobby Petrino would be your head coach and a knucklehead. That's not okay. I'm anti-knucklehead, but I'm particularly anti-knucklehead at the top of your organization. That's not going to work, right? And Bobby Petrino, you could say, well, Bobby Petrino just had the one incident. Bobby Petrino has a list of things that he has been involved with. I could do a show on Bobby Petrino by himself and not even talk about on the field stuff. We could start with just off the field stuff with Bobby Petrino, but Bobby Petrino's greatest story, the greatest hits of Bobby Petrino has to do with that motorcycle accident that he had where he had his mistress on the motorcycle as well, the lady with whom he was having an affair. And Bobby Petrino is not an idiot now. Bobby Petrino calculated, did the math, and realized if they catch me in an accident with my mistress, this is about to be a problem, especially when you consider that the mistress is actually my coaching assistant, and I've been paying her more money than she deserves. I passed over on other candidates who are more experienced and better for this job because I wanted to get in with my mistress. So I'm having an affair with my mistress, and this is not good. What do? So he tried to get the person who's going to call 911, tried to get that person to not report that she was there, right? And they wound up doing it. The university wound up reporting that it was just him in the accident. And Bobby Petrino stood there with his neck brace, looking for all the world like a fool, lied directly to everybody about how he was not there with the mistress. Later, obviously, it comes out that he was there with the mistress, and the reason why they were on a motorcycle ride together in the first place was she said she always wanted to go on a ride. Oh, good. Well, I'm glad we had that reason. Otherwise, that would have been, no, it's still ridiculous. It's still absolutely ridiculous. And I, if I'm Tennessee, don't want that cloud of ridiculous to be anywhere near that school, right? Now, winning fixes stuff. This is the issue here. Winning makes everything better. We've actually forgotten, well, I would say forgotten, but we've actually put aside the complete and utter foolishness of Bobby Petrino. We acted like it didn't happen. If I'm the Vols, I don't hire that man. That guy has the most swagger of any person that ever lived. To be able to think that you could get away with having your assistant be your mistress. And even after the accident, when it looks like this is all coming to light, it was how brazen he was to just lie to everyone's face. And that would have been the greatest coaching story of all time had Hugh Freeze not done this summer what Hugh Freeze did this summer. You don't want that around your school. You don't. And did I bring up Bobby Petrino in order to retell that Bobby Petrino story? I absolutely did. I absolutely did. Because it's funny. That guy had, like, that's some confidence. That is some huevos there on that guy. To be able to stand there and lie straight to everybody's face. And the quick thinking, he got into a motorcycle accident and immediately had the presence of mind to say, no, don't say that she was at this accident. Don't say it. This is not a good thing for me. The presence of mind there. Now, Bobby Petrino, quick thinker, but poor life decision maker. And I wouldn't say that except that I have about 10 years worth of stories on Bobby Petrino. And look, I only got an hour-long show. I can't really give you all 10 years worth of stories of Bobby Petrino, but that's the best one. That's the one that fully encapsulates why you should not hire Bobby Petrino to be the head coach of your major college football program. Clutch with Keon Rose on 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, and NoogaRadio.com. There's some rumors going on in Florida. Florida believes that they've got Chip Kelly in the bag. Florida is vetting Chip Kelly as we speak. And they are trying to figure out if Chip Kelly is going to be in any kind of trouble if they were to hire him, which I think is a very good question to ask because Chip Kelly got into the NFL in the first place because Chip Kelly was running away from some NCAA violations. And you can't go to another college because those sanctions are going to clap you wherever it is that you land. You are going to be serving some kind of suspension or paying some kind of fine. And then you'll have your good name tarnished and all that stuff. So, yeah, Chip Kelly ran away from the NCAA violations straight to the NFL. A la Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll did it correctly, though. Pete Carroll won. If Pete Carroll got to the NFL and was immediately impactful, and the Seahawks have been good the entire time that he's been there. And so now we forget that Pete Carroll also ran away from NCAA violations. The same violations that Reggie Bush got caught with and had to give his Heisman Trophy back. Pete Carroll ran away. And now he's in the NFL. Chip Kelly tried to run away, but they didn't like him very much in Philly. They liked him even less in San Francisco. And now he's on TV just waiting it out. The Gators want him. I think that would be a good fit. But they need to figure out if Chip Kelly comes back, is Chip Kelly going to get smacked with the violation now? I mean, it's been long enough, right? Like Chip Kelly's been out of college football for 4 years now. It could be enough for Mark Emmert and the NCAA to decide to just let it go. It's very possible. So yeah, you're Chip Kelly. You might consider Florida. Yeah, Florida strongly considering Chip Kelly. Why? Florida and Florida's athletic director has said this. Wants Florida football to be fun for Gator fans. And look, Florida's better than Tennessee this season. I mean, they played better football. They've looked like the better school, even in that head-to-head matchup where they threw that game-winning late deep bomb. They did beat up Tennessee a lot at the point of attack through much of that game. Especially like if you look, especially at the line battles, Florida looked like the better football team. But that being said, it's been awful to watch them play this year. Like they're not good. And offensively, if you want to talk about an eyesore, Florida's offense. So, yeah, the Gators are looking at this and going, well, if we get the offense right, if we can put points on the board, we'll be entertaining to fans, and we could win. And someone's got to be the counter to Georgia, because Georgia's decided to do this thing with defense. If you can be a ridiculously powerful offense, and Florida defensively this year was still really good. I think they were up to their standard defensively. They just weren't up to their standard offensively. This school that's produced a number of great college quarterbacks. I mean, Rex Grossman was great in college, and Tim Tebow. I mean, you've produced a number of great college quarterbacks, and then you haven't produced one since basically Urban Meyer left. It's not good. Lunch with Keon Rose on Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. So they're trying to figure that out. Texas A&M, to their credit, they're considering Jimbo Fisher. And again, arguably a great hire. Arguably a great hire. Jimbo Fisher is a national champion and might be on the outs of Florida State. Because I remember people had Jimbo Fisher rumors starting as early as 2 years ago. If people were talking about if Jimbo Fisher would leave after Jameis. No. The team was still good at that point. But now, Florida State can't win. They look awful. They look worse than Florida. Florida and Florida State, by the way, putting up far fewer points than Florida Atlantic, where Lane Kiffin is located. But Jimbo Fisher, you go to Texas A&M, you go to a school that's going to pay you a lot of money. The Aggies are deep pocket-wise. You're going to go to a school where there are recruits. You're in Texas. You're in Texas. And yeah, you do play a little bit of that little brother role to the Longhorns, but it ain't slim pickings in Texas. You'll be in Texas. You'll be right next to Louisiana as well to be able to pick from some of that talent also. That's not a bad spot to be in. I think the recruiting at A&M with the Aggies would be better for him than what he's got going on at Florida State. And after this season, I don't know that Florida State's necessarily that high on Jimbo Fisher. So Jim Fisher might be able to leave before he's forced out. And if he goes, A&M, good fit, can't afford to pay him. They're planning on moving on from their coach, Kevin Sumlin. They need someone to really be an offensive mind and take advantage of the weapons that they have. We've seen what A&M has been able to do with Kellen Mond when he took over the quarterback position. I am a person that believes that they're playing underneath their talent level. And I think that that's the argument against Kevin Sumlin as well, is that he does not necessarily have this team playing up to their talent level as such. So you get Jimbo Fisher in there, you could start to maybe turn that ship around. Playing in the SEC West is no joke, and they haven't been able to necessarily beat the upper echelon of the West. They haven't been able to really beat LSU. They haven't been able to really beat Auburn. Not at all with Alabama, like not even close. And they do beat the other schools in the West, right? They do a good job against Miss State, though they lose that sometimes too. They have Brett Bielema's number, but this season, who doesn't? Who hasn't beaten Brett Bielema this season? You've got to see if you can build on this thing and improve, because I think the Aggies are in a position where, look, they have too much talent naturally around that school, naturally in the state of Texas, to not be able to move forward. Jimbo Fisher just might be the answer to that question, and that rumor there, that idea that Jimbo could be headed to Texas A&M, that rumor is starting to gain a lot of momentum. And for good reason. It makes a ton of sense. Clutch with Keon Rose on 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, NoogaRadio.com. Our phone number is 423-800-8949. That's 423-800-8949. Couple of quarterbacks from the NFL. Well, one NFL free agent and one Cam Newton. First, let's talk about the free agent named Colin Kaepernick. Colin Kaepernick has been named GQ Citizen of the Year, to the outrage of a lot of people. Sean Hannity was expressing that outrage earlier when he was on the air. And Britt McHenry, the former ESPN employee who believes that she was fired because she's a conservative, even though ESPN fired a lot of people for just budget reasons, slamming GQ and Colin Kaepernick. Now, Colin Kaepernick being the Citizen of the Year makes sense to me, unsurprisingly, because this is my stance. I like what Kaepernick is about in the general sense. Are there specifics? Are there particulars that I do not agree with? Yeah, I thought it was stupid when he wore the police pig socks. I thought that was dumb, and he apologized for that. So, like, there's not like he thinks that was a great idea either. I thought that was stupid. I thought him wearing the Fidel Castro shirt, I thought that was dumb too. Castro's not a good guy. That's not a person to be respected or revered, much less put on your chest in the form of a t-shirt. I thought that was dumb too. But in terms of wanting racial equality in America, especially in terms of where it comes to police brutality, wanting to stand up against that and being willing to put your neck out for it, because this is something that we lack in our modern American society, is not just people with ideas and beliefs. Everyone has ideas and beliefs. Social media is filled to the brim with way too many people who have ideas and beliefs. But being able and being willing to put your neck on the line for it, actually put your neck out there. We don't have enough people like that. If GQ wants to make him the Citizen of the Year for that reason, that makes perfect sense to me. He believed in something, and I believe it's something that's worth believing in, and he was willing to put his neck out for it. That makes you Citizen of the Year. I 100% agree. And he knew he wasn't going to be in the NFL again. And he did it anyway. That's character. Wearing a Fidel Castro shirt? Not great. Not great. And my final quarterback point, Cam Newton, back in business last night, pounding the Dolphins. The Panthers put up 45 points. 45 points on them Dolphins. 4 touchdowns, 254 yards, no interceptions for Mr. Cam Newton, who powered that team. And Cam Newton's been looking much better as he goes on, as he's been getting healthier, as the shoulder looks better and better, because he did have shoulder surgery this offseason. He did the rehab. He did come back a little bit early. The shoulder looked weak, right? We talk about Cam throwing a lot of these interceptions. It's not just bad quarterback play. A lot of it with Cam is he's trying to make plays that just 2 years ago he was capable of making, and his body physically won't allow him to. Last night, we saw a Cam Newton that went up against a good Dolphins defense, right? Ndamukong Suh and that Dolphins D-line. We saw Cam Newton punish them. His body is starting to get more back in line with MVP season Cam than last year's Cam Newton and even Cam Newton earlier this season. And I think the healthier that he gets, the more interesting the NFC South becomes, and the harder it gets for the Atlanta Falcons to really make a push here for that wild card spot. Because you're going to need to win, I think, at least 10 games. So the Falcons can't really afford to lose, but maybe one more. Clutch with Keon Rose on 92.7 FM, Nooga Radio, and NoogaRadio.com. Alex Jones, next.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, Digital FM 95.7.